Shri Ram, Vande Mataram, and Jai Ma. I'm grateful to the organizers for giving me an opportunity to engage on the subject. As usual, it has come down to Congress versus BJP, even on a subject which I think is of great importance to people and the quality of public discourse. But since we have anyway entered this hammam, so to speak, let's see how many of us are clothed in this hammam. The subject that's been presented for today is that journalism today is more interested in pleasing rather than presenting. True to my, let's say, training as a lawyer, I'll try and split my submission at least in 3 parts, taking about 2 minutes each. The first is to present my position. The second is to present facts supporting that position. And the third is leaving it to the audience on the basis of my summary to draw their own conclusions. Having appeared in certain politically incorrect matters, I'm used to taking on a hostile audience, so game on, no problem. First, I think the framing of the question or the framing of the proposition itself needs to be questioned for a slightly different reason altogether. When someone says that journalism today is more interested in pleasing than presenting, I think it's very convenient and mighty rich to reduce the scope of analysis only to 2014 to 2023. Because then it's almost as if there was a golden period of journalism that we have all witnessed in the past, and suddenly things have gone to the dogs. Before I proceed, I certainly agree with Mr. Gokhale on one point, and this is perhaps one of those rare instances where the twain shall meet, which is Telegraph certainly has the guts to get the rest of us to criticize the government because it can't do it itself. So I will certainly congratulate them for having developed the spine to shoot from our able shoulders. Thank you. Point number 1. When we speak of revenue, when we speak of presentation of facts, and when we speak of sobriety in representation or reportage, so to speak, you must understand where all of this comes from. I would want to use Gangotri, but sorry, I don't wish to use Gangotri, which is such a pure term in the context of the Gandhis. I'll call it Gandhotri. Okay. The DNA of the media as it stands today is significantly forged and shaped by the crucible of the emergency. It is significantly forged by the Nehruvian legacy and the Gandhian legacy, not Mahatma Gandhi, but Indira Gandhi. Taken forward ably by her son Rajiv Gandhi and even by Sri Manmohan Singh, Dr. Manmohan Singh, the most educated Prime Minister of this country, apparently. First, independent India certainly saw enough voices which had the guts and the temerity and the audacity to question the Nehruvian government. However, the fact of the matter remains that the Nehruvian government did not display democratic tendencies. In fact, it demonstrated anti-democratic tendencies. The very first amendment to the constitution with respect to free speech was promulgated and enacted because Mr. Nehru's government lost in the Supreme Court, thanks to Ramesh Thapar and Brij Bhushan, both of whom questioned the land reform policies of Mr. Nehru. So to overcome a judgment of the Supreme Court, he introduces the First Amendment, which has significantly broader, vaguer, and blanket proscriptions against free speech. Something that was, of course, supported by the chairman of the Constitution, let's say, the drafting committee of the Constitution, his law minister, so to speak, the lawyer to the government, Dr. Ambedkar. Now, why is this crucial? It's not as if this particular tendency was limited to the Nehruvian government, because the fact of the matter is, apart from instances under his legacy, it was under the emergency or during the emergency, the government developed a tendency to classify media under 3 categories: friendly, hostile, and neutral. These were revealed, these are documented facts. Based on their reportage, 12 days before the imposition of the emergency, during the emergency, they basically slotted these newspapers as friendly, hostile, and neutral. Now, which were these newspapers? Let me actually wash this dirty linen in public for a moment. Amrit Bazar Patrika, Hindu, and Hindustan Times and Times of India were classified as government-friendly based on the reportage before and during the emergency. Now, these are the voices which are apparently speaking truth to power. Now, why is this crucial? Emergency effectively led to a certain tendency where independent voices were told, fall in line or there will be repercussions in addition to loss of revenue. Now, again, why is this crucial? Because revenue was a point that was raised. Most people don't know that the Press Information Bureau and the Directorate of Advertisement and Visual Publicity were constituted during the emergency to screen reportage and to ensure that people are effectively threatened on the basis of the government advertising they would get or they would not get depending on how they speak. Now, this is important because when someone says that the job of a reporter is to only present, I'm sorry, no, it is not the job of a reporter only to present. The job of the reporter is to contribute to information discourse by elevating the course of public discourse and contributing to shaping of opinions and to formation of opinions. There's nothing wrong with it. Which means I'm perfectly comfortable with a journalist who at least wears his ideological proclivities on his sleeve as opposed to hiding behind the facade of neutrality. So what we have gone through all these years is the Indian traffic position, which is keep left, being the mainstream position as far as media is concerned, and the keep left position is presented as neutrality, so that whoever speaks against it comes out as the dictatorial right wing. You see how convenient this is and what kind of a trap you are in. Your position, which is ideologically biased, becomes a neutral position. Everybody else has to swing according to that. So the fact of the matter is, when opposition parties realize that the only way you get some column space in newspapers is by actually interfering with the media, the path to that has been paved by the government that has been in power for 40 years at the very least, thanks to the DNA that has been shaped under its regime. So it's mighty convenient to say that today it has changed. No, it hasn't. This has always been the case, and on this I agree with Dr. Ranganathan. Second, this is one example that I have to give before I close. I just have 1 minute. I'll give 2 more examples and I'll leave it at that. Perhaps someone should open the annals of history and take a look at the role played by Sri V.C. Shukla during the regime. Officers of the information service were effectively tasked together along with IPS officers to go after journalists at the reportage because they were expected to only present. Which is to say, you will not air an opinion except for plain, cold reportage of facts. So when someone says that the journalist's job is only to present, they're actually taking us back to the age of emergency, which is to say, you will not have an independent opinion. So I'm sorry, I don't agree that the job of a journalist is only to present as much as it is not their job to please. Today, therefore, there is a competitive race between both, let's say, national parties or people in the political spectrum, so to speak, to compete for the ability to weave their own narratives. This is something that was started by the great Pandit of this country, Sri Nehru, the fount of everything that's great in this country. Finally, from 1999 until 2014, or even thereafter, I would want to understand the number of times the super prime minister of this country, the lady, was ever interviewed by any mainstream journalist. And if they ever managed to ask her questions such as, how difficult was it for you to say no to the position of the prime minister? How do you manage to wade through this politics despite your gender? When you aspire for the, let's say, for the post of the prime minister of the country, you're expected to rise above your gender as much as possible. So you actually handed the contender for the prime minister's position a victim card on a platter, and this, according to you, was fantastic mainstream neutral journalism? Please ask yourself what kind of questions you've asked of people in power in the past. 3, the number of channels in this country which are owned by political parties itself bears noting. From Sakshi TV to Sun TV to Jaya TV, it's owned across the board. So if we have such serious problems with corporate entities owning media, let's say voices, so to speak, or media platforms, why haven't these people actually started asking questions or actually filed a petition before the Supreme Court? Because every day, all sorts of petitions are filed before the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to lay down guidelines with respect to political ownership of platforms directly. Why hasn't that happened so far? So I would only submit one final thing before I take leave of the audience. You're being played by both sides. And that's precisely why serious journalism is happening today, but outside the portals of mainstream media. Ultimately, the quality of journalism that gets support and traction is a reflection of the taste of the society as we stand today. So if you're serious about supporting serious independent voices, go for blogs, go for specialist portals, not mainstream media. Nobody is actually doing justice to your mandate. Thank you.